A man looking for an opportunity. 25-year-old male. I got home last night, which in my apartment complex means all the good parking spots are taken. So I parked a good distance from my apartment and began walking towards it. There's a thunderstorm and it's not raining yet, so the air has energy and smells great. I decided to take my time and make a loop around my building and come up behind it. As I make the corner and begin walking back down towards my apartment, I see a guy coming out of the parking lot between two cars. We nod and I slow my pace, and he begins walking ahead of me. But I notice he also slowed down his pace to match mine, so I start going even slower, intending to cut the corner as soon as we approach it, and enter my apartment as soon as possible, the front door being right on the corner. He seems reluctant to walk too far ahead of me, so already I'm on alert. He approaches the corner first and I come around. He's at my apartment door shaking my doorknob. He looks at me as I round the corner and says, "I lost my keys." The realization that he was lying and the implication of the lie slammed every one of my systems into high alert. Everything in me told me not to stop, so I kept walking and gave him a sympathetic smile. He turns and stares at me and asks if I have a phone he can borrow. At this point, I'm feeling stuck and panicking. He's pretending that he lives in my apartment, so I can't get past him. My car is too far away and in the dark, and any sudden movements will alert him that I'm onto him, so I tell him my phone died, which caused my heart to immediately skip a beat, because now he thinks I can't call the cops. I walk one door over and started knocking on the door. It's past midnight. The guy is standing at my doorstep, just staring at me. After an eternity, my neighbor, who I'm on "Hey, how are you? A nice night out" speaking terms with, opens the door. I immediately say, "Hey, Kevin," and push past him into his apartment. I immediately turned and closed the door and locked it. I explained to my neighbor what was happening, and he went in to get his gun, and I called the cops, but the guy was gone, and now I'll never be able to walk around my apartment complex without constantly looking over my shoulder. Saw the man who robbed my house. So this just happened last night, and after no food and barely any sleep for the last 10 hours, I have woken up this morning ready to post what happened last night. My apologies if it's pretty long. We live in a court in an upscale neighborhood in a large city in the USA. Our court faces the expressway, and directly across from our house is a PG&E campus that has a pretty open field that you can cut through to reach the streets to exit the neighborhood and get back onto the expressway. My parents were out at a concert, and my sister was at work, and it was about 7:30 p.m. when I decided to head to my boyfriend's house, who lived 5 minutes away. Now, before I left, I had this weird nagging feeling that I need to leave our living room lights on, as well as the port lights. This will mean something later on, I promise. So I left the lights on, got in my car, and drove off to my boyfriend's house. An hour later, I get a notification on my phone that the Ring camera that is positioned at our front porch went off. I immediately knew something was wrong because I knew no one was supposed to be home for a while. So I open up the app and don't see anything, and am waiting for the video to populate, and see a guy in a black hoodie walking up to our porch, knocking on the door, then moving away from the porch into the darkness. Now, the way our camera is positioned makes it very difficult to see his face, but my dad was adamant the guy had a mask off. About 1 minute after that, I get notified again, and it shows the guy walking back up to the door, knocking a bit louder, then moving away from the porch again. At this point, I knew it wasn't a prank, so I let off the siren through the app, hoping it would deter him, but I didn't see him in the camera. I knew he had gone through the backyard, so I called the cops. With the way the dispatcher was talking to me, it almost seemed like she thought it was a false alarm, but I was insistent that someone was trying to break in. She asked me to drive back to my house, and once I got there, to call them back. I feel like unless I called back, they had no intentions of sending a cop to check on things. My boyfriend and I drive up to my house and don't pull up in the driveway, but park across from my house and turn off my car light. I had left my sister's window blinds open, thank God I did, and kept looking at that window from my car as I knew that was the only way to see into the house. And I dialed the cops again. 30 seconds into the call, I noticed flashlights through the window, and I tell the dispatcher. I initially thought that it could have been a car driving by from the other side of my house, but that thought was shot in 10 seconds when I saw the silhouette of a man looking through the window. The moment I saw the silhouette, I yelled in the phone, "Someone's in my house! Please, hurry!" The dispatcher told us to drive out of the court and park a bit away for safety while we wait for the cops to arrive. But a minute or two of us sitting in the car and checking behind us, my boyfriend yelled, "I see him walking ahead!" And we see a guy in a black hoodie holding a bag, fast walking down the street to our right and hiding behind the shadows of the corner house. I saw him and I shined my high beams on him, so he knew I saw him, and at that point, he started running towards a parked SUV that was parked in front of us the entire time. He got in the car, and it immediately turned on and they started driving. At that point, adrenaline kicked in for me, and I floored it, trying to catch up to him, while the dispatcher and my boyfriend are telling me to stop driving and park because it's not safe to chase after him. About 10 seconds after we park and the SUV is turning right, I see a cop pull up behind us, and I immediately roll down my window and gesture to the cop that the guy is driving up ahead of us, and he floored to catch up to him. The cop came back and told me that he missed him and didn't see which direction the guy fled, but we drove back to my house and were met by 5 more cop cars, a K-9 unit, and a helicopter hovering over the entire valley, trying to search for him. Turns out the guy broke through my parents' window and focused his attention on their room and stole thousands of dollars worth of jewelry, including my parents' wedding jewelry, as well as my grandparents' and aunt's jewelry. When he reached mine and my sister's room is when I pulled up to the house because he rummaged through a bit of our stuff, but absolutely nothing was stolen from our rooms. The cops believed that I bought myself time to get home by leaving the lights on because he took extra time to ensure no one was home, and that gave me time to pull up to my house and deter him before he stole more. They still haven't caught the guy, but I guess a house down the street from ours was broken into an hour before ours was, and a house maybe 10 minutes away from us was broken into a couple hours after us. The cops believe the guy tried to blend into our neighborhood for that extra hour, so he could buy himself time for the cops to stop searching so we can move on. There are numerous reports of a suspicious SUV parked with its lights off in our surrounding neighborhoods, just sitting there, which is why the cops believe he was trying to blend in and buy time. So, POS who broke into our home stole my parents' priceless jewelry and made us live in fear. I hope they catch your slimy ass and we never meet again. Home alone, please don't rob us. Just a few days ago, I was home, minding my own business, studying for an exam. I was kind of stressed out and couldn't really focus on anything. It was midday. The doorbell rang, so I got up and opened the door. There was a man mid-30s, average build, looked like a construction worker. He asked me if my parents were home because he needs $50 to fix a pipe. I told him no, they are not. He asked me when they're coming. I told him I live with my boyfriend, and I asked why does he need more money since we just paid $35 to the building administration. He says those are for other things and that this is an emergency. That 9 neighbors had called him because on our side of the building, the eaves were broken and the water was dripping onto their windows. He then asked me to talk to my boyfriend about the money, and I told him to come later because he was not home. He told me to ask him when he was coming back because the problem needs urgent care. I closed the door, went to grab my phone, and I asked him, red flag, is it a pipe or are the eaves broken? I wanted to ask him which neighbors had called him, if he could give me a receipt, how much exactly was this going to cost, but at this point, I had gotten a little bit scared. I was a 100-pound girly. I actually looked like a kid, to be honest, which is why he asked for my parents, though I am 22 years old. The way he talked was also weird. I don't know how to describe it. It just had a mean and crazy, crazy ass vibe to it. So, he could have knocked me over with the door. I also felt incredibly stupid to have told him I was home alone at the time, so he kept asking to talk to other people. It was my first instinct. Anyways, my boyfriend said he would come in an hour. I didn't tell him the whole story because the guy was waiting outside. I opened the door again. I decided I would rather talk to him than make him angry by not opening the door. The door to our apartment is an old wooden door. We live in a cheap rented apartment, so I didn't feel protected enough by it. There I am. I open the door. I tell him it's gonna be an hour till he comes back, and that I'm very, very sorry for the inconvenience. He says it's alright, he'll come later. Except he didn't leave immediately. He asked me about our rent, if it worked, if we were students, to which I barely replied. He then proceeded to ask me if I didn't know other girls such as myself, cute, looking for a partner, someone 25 to 30 years old, that he's a good guy, a city guy, and it's really, really hard to find a good girl. He probably took a good 5 minutes to explain this and grill me for telephone numbers of girls who would not hang up on him. I tried to be as nice as I could and explained to him I only had friends my age and they were all in relationships as far as I knew. He asked me a couple more times, but I kept telling him the exact same thing, so he gave up. He asked me if my boyfriend and I had been together for long, to which I replied that we had been together for 2 years. He wished us good luck and something that would translate to, "May you have a future long marriage." He asked me which apartment is the administrator's apartment, and I told him, and he finally left. I told my boyfriend everything, and he came home as soon as he could. By this point, I felt like puking. I was so scared I had given too much information while trying to keep him calm. He immediately said it was a scam. I went downstairs to talk to the admin. She told him he had knocked on her door and asked her for $15, and that the girl on the 3rd floor, me, had sent him. She also told him she knew he was a scammer and not to worry, just be careful. I am scared. It seemed like he is planning a robbery, like he got into the building. Someone must have opened the door for him. He inspected the doors and chose ours because it's, well, not the best door. He asked for money to see if I had it on hand. He asked for the rent price to see if we have money, or if the stuff in the apartment is valuable at all. Maybe we've been tagged, or maybe asking money really was the whole plan, and some people fall for that. But why choose me? Why choose our apartment? There's like 13 to 14 others. Weirdly enough, I feel like he was nice to me. He was calm. He didn't try to convince me to give him money at all. None of that, actually. He tried to get my parents and then my boyfriend to be his target. He took pity on me. Nevertheless, we've been sleeping with all our interior doors open to hear someone's trying to break into our apartment, and we try not to leave it empty for long periods of time, living in constant fear, living the dream. Robbed in the train. I'm a long-time reader, but never posted anything. This did not happen directly to me, but it was one of the things that freaked and still freak me out the most. So this happened about 6 years ago. On my freshman year in college, I was an inexperienced 18-year-old male that came from a small town with virtually no crime to the suburbs of a big city. I lived right near my university on a neighborhood that wasn't very bad. Most students lived there, and I kind of felt kind of safe. About 2 miles away, there was quite a dangerous neighborhood, filled with crime and drugs. I even heard a story about a student being kidnapped and held hostage while I was there. I had gone to spend the weekend at my hometown, so I got off of the bus. It was about 7 p.m. Since it was around November, it was already very dark outside. I always took the train from the bus stop to the university station, and then took a 15-minute walk to my house through the campus. Sometimes I would take the bus with 1 or 2 hometown friends that went to the same university as me, but this particular weekend I was alone. So I got on the train. I saw another freshman that was taking a class with me. I didn't know him very well, but we had talked a couple of times while on the class we were taking together. I greeted him, and since he was focused on his phone, I did not want to disturb him. so I sat a couple seats away from him. This is a very important detail. This guy was carrying a rectangular shoulder computer case, which really screams, there's a computer here. Since it was 7 p.m., there's a decent amount of people on the train. However, University is the terminal station, so almost only students go there. When we were 2 stations before there were about 10 people in all spread of 5 to 6 carriages. This all happened very quickly. The doors opened and nobody left that station. Suddenly, 2 huge black guys burst in and grabbed my class buddy. Another huge guy that was inside the train grabbed him too. When I say huge, I mean they were literally like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I am not exaggerating this. So the guys grabbed him and took him out of the train with his phone and shoulder computer bag. They still punched him once, took his bag, and were grabbing him. Luckily, he managed to get off his coat and get back in the train just in time for the doors to close. Nobody in the train reacted, because people were spread out, and it all happened very fast. My buddy was pale and very scared. I went to him, asked if he was okay, and comforted him. If not for a matter of seconds, those guys would have beaten him and sent him to the hospital. Both of us were scared to death. After that, I took him home, and he used my phone to call his roommates, because they had taken his phone and keys. I was totally scared and freaked out too. That was the first time I witnessed a robbery, and that kind of gratuitous violence. It really changed the way I looked at that train ride, and I never took it alone again. When I was alone, I took a taxi home, not to take any chances. So, huge guys that robbed my buddy. Let's not meet. I was almost robbed at work by a guy who robbed the store next to me. I was 16 years old at the time, working as a shift manager at a frozen yogurt place. I typically would close up shop alone. Don't ask why the owner thought it would be a good idea for a 16-year-old girl to close a yogurt store alone at 10 p.m. and handle all the closing work, counting registers, separating tips, cleaning up, etc., 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 etc. Now, about 20 minutes before closing time, alone in the shop, a man walked in and immediately gave me a creepy vibe. He was dressed in dark clothing, didn't make any eye contact, and didn't say a word to me. He paced around the shop for what seemed like hours. Realistically, it was really like only a minute or so. We had an emergency button on a register that we were instructed to push in the event of a robbery or emergency situation. To me, as a 16-year-old girl alone in a frozen yogurt shop with a man pacing around in silence in dark clothing, around closing time, this constructed an emergency situation immediately. So I pressed the button. Immediately after pressing the button, I asked the man if he needed something, at which point he said, no. I was preparing myself at any point for him to pull out a knife or gun, but thankfully, he began to leave, as law enforcement was pulling up. Just as he walked outside, law enforcement were exiting their vehicles. He took off running. They nabbed him, questioned him, and placed him into custody. Long story short, as I was told by the deputies, he had just finished robbing the subway next door about 30 minutes before he came into my shop. They were uncertain whether or not it was his intention to rob me as well, but thankfully, because of the swift action of law enforcement, and them already being in the area because of the previous robbery next door, that didn't happen. So, I just want to say to the creepy pacing man in my yogurt shop at closing time who didn't say but 2 words to me, and had just robbed the store next door, let's not meet.